Fleet Admiral Ivan Draven stood at the central console of the Galactic Confederation's flagship, the Unity's beacon, staring at a projection of countless red dots that represented Krazon warships. Though the giant hologram gave the impression of a serene starfield, Draven knew better. These dots stood for devastation across half the galaxy, billions of lives at risk, and entire planets forced into submission. The war had dragged on for 7 long years, with no end in sight. The Krazon Empire, led by their feared Supreme Commander Garthox, had conquered world after world, driving Confederation forces into desperate retreats. They were powerful, methodical, and saw no purpose beyond conquest. Now, with the Confederation's resources nearly depleted and morale at an all-time low, a choice had been forced upon them. Request help from a species once deemed too unpredictable to involve in galactic affairs. Humans, the outliers of the cosmos, unruly, chaotic, and yet strangely innovative, had been contacted, and that decision had ignited a storm of controversy in the High Council. In the command chamber, Draven rubbed his temples with gloved hands. His short, silver-flecked hair was slicked back. Those stray locks fell over his forehead in moments of stress. Carrie, his strategic advisor, a tall and slender being with shimmering, jade-colored skin, stood at his side. Carrie's voice carried the exhaustion all too common these days. "Admiral, we've lost 3 more outposts in the last standard month. Our estimates place the Krazon fleet at no fewer than 400 operational capital ships. Our own navy can field perhaps 40 at best, many in dire need of repair." Carrie paused, glancing at the Admiral's face for some sign of optimism. Finding none, Carrie continued, "We have also had to pull back from the Paralon system. Civilians there, we couldn't protect them." Draven let out a slow breath, recalling the battered transmissions from Paralon, the pleas for help that had gone unanswered when the Krazon arrived. "Damn Garthox," he muttered. "We can't stand up to their aggression. Every time we attempt a counteroffensive, we lose resources we can't afford to lose. We're at the brink, Terry." The aide nodded solemnly. The council reconvened last night and voted by a slim margin to send an official plea to Earth. "I believe the humans are due to arrive soon to discuss terms. Are you certain this is wise? We have no idea what sort of demands they might make." Draven gestured dismissively. "Wise or not, it's the only path left. If we do nothing, the Krazon swallow us whole. If the humans prove unmanageable, well, at least we attempted something. Legends about their chaotic nature might even prove beneficial. We have nothing else to lose." While Terry explained the final logistic arrangements, Draven recalled stories of humans gleaned from old mission logs, rumors from half-forgotten conferences. Humans once tried to mediate a dispute between the Loran and the Zenturi, only to end the negotiations drunk on local beverages and somehow obtaining the most favorable trade deal in 3 centuries. Another time, they repelled Talaxian pirates from a Mars colony by strapping bombs onto recreational vehicles and launching them into space in a bizarre demolition derby. The humans certainly had imagination. Whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. When the human delegation finally arrived, they did so without preamble or ceremony. A large shuttle, painted with neon streaks of color, docked in the beacon's hangar bay. Dozens of Confederation officers had lined up in neat rows, expecting a formal greeting, but from the moment the shuttle doors slid open, it was clear the humans had other ideas. Some sort of rhythmic, pounding music echoed from inside. A ramp extended, and out stepped Ambassador Jonah Grant, wearing a crisp black suit with a small lapel pin shaped like Earth. At his side walked General Elise Kowalski, a woman of average height, short blonde hair parted severely, and eyes that gleamed with peculiar confidence. Behind them trailed 2 aides hauling metal crates of unknown contents. Admiral Draven forced a polite smile. He was used to ambassadors who wore ornate robes, saluted in a particular manner, and spoke with studied politeness. Grant strode forward, extended a hand, a traditional human greeting gesture, and said, "Admiral, thanks for having us. Sorry if our arrival was a bit loud. We like to keep morale high." Indeed, there had been a thunderous bass line booming in the background. Draven shook Grant's hand stiffly. Welcome aboard the Unity's beacon. We appreciate your rapid response to our situation. Grant waved off the formality. Oh, it's no trouble. The folks on Earth have been monitoring your war with the Krazon. Nasty business. We figured we could help. Harry stepped forward, arms crossed politely in front. Ambassador, General, the High Council is prepared to hear your proposals. But you should know, the Krazon have systematically destroyed every fleet that's challenged them. We've spent years pouring resources into new weapons, upgrading our starships, developing advanced tactics, and still we've made little progress. May I ask how you plan to achieve success where we have failed? General Kowalski grinned. With respect, Terry, we suspect you've been fighting the Krazon on their own terms. The standard rules of engagement. But humans, we don't always follow the standard rules. Admiral Draven led them through a corridor to the main briefing room, passing dozens of officers who gave the humans curious looks. The hum of the starship's life support systems and the overhead lights made for a stark contrast with a continuing faint beat of music still playing from somewhere around the human shuttle. Once the group settled around a large circular table, Draven activated a hologram of the known galaxy. Red zones highlighted Krazon territory. There was a lot of red. Grant glanced at it, scratched his chin. That's extensive, but nothing we didn't expect from the data. So, how long until Garthox's next push? Terry pulled up a tactical overlay. We anticipate a major offensive within 3 standard weeks. Our intelligence suggests the Krazon have new capital ships under construction. We suspect they could launch a final blow at our core systems, possibly wiping us out. Kowalski nodded slowly. Right. Well, the good news is that we can engage before that happens. She clicked a device on her wrist, projecting another hologram. We've dubbed this Operation Firecracker. Could rename it something more dignified if you prefer, but the gist is we infiltrate, we disrupt, we introduce a few psychological elements, and we see how the Krazon handle it. Draven studied the data swirling in 3D. From what he understood, the humans intended to hack the Krazon's secure network, something the Confederation's best cryptographers had tried for years, all in vain. And how exactly do you plan to succeed there? The Krazon are known for impenetrable firewalls, heavily encrypted systems, and advanced AI detection. We've done our homework, Kowalski replied. There's a particular vulnerability in the Krazon's standard operating procedure. They love to rely on a centralized command network. It's good for them, but if you breach that network, you can slip viruses everywhere. Our infiltration methods are somewhat unorthodox. Carrie frowned. Unorthodox in what sense? Grant smirked, leaning back in his chair. Let's just say it involves posing as an IT help desk. Might sound ridiculous, but it's worked on quite a few unsuspecting civilizations before. We ask for credentials politely, pretend we're from their technical support division, and sometimes that alone gets us 80% of the access we need. For the rest, we have specialized cryptanalysis software. Draven exchanged a quick glance with Thierry. So your plan is social engineering? Kowalski tapped the side of her head. Works wonders. We've tested it. And once we're in, we've got a custom virus that effectively reprograms their fleet's navigational and combat systems. We'll demonstrate that part soon. Though it all sounded reckless, the Admiral found himself strangely reassured by the humans' confidence. The Council had not specified that humans had to share every detail of their plan, only that they had to produce some feasible method. Very well. And once you take over their systems, what's next? Grant and Kowalski shared a knowing look. We encourage them to stand down in a manner of speaking. Terry raised a brow ridge, but Draven decided they'd get no clearer explanation at this juncture. The Council will likely convene tomorrow to discuss formalities, but for now, let's assume your infiltration plan moves forward. I must warn you, if it fails, we may not have the strength left to recover. This is our last gambit. Grant nodded. Understood. We'll do our best. And for the record, I'm fairly certain we can wrap this up in about 3 hours once we launch our operation. A stunned silence gripped the room. Terry nearly dropped the datapad in her hands. Draven scowled. You yissed. Not all, Kowalski said. We've spent decades mastering the art of unconventional warfare, Admiral. If your intelligence on Krazon vulnerabilities is correct, that's all the time we'll need. Draven sighed, gesturing to Terry. Set up quarters for our guests. We'll provide everything you need. I suppose we'll see if your confidence is warranted. He watched them depart, their posture relaxed, as if they were heading to a casual get-together rather than a final stand for the fate of the galaxy. Strange creatures, these humans. And yet, Draven felt the faintest glimmer of hope he had not felt in months. By the next day, word had spread among the Confederation's military leaders that humans had arrived with promises of a swift victory. Curiosity, doubt, and desperation swirled in equal measure. Some recalled the bizarre successes humans had achieved against pirates and other minor threats in the past. Others fretted that the humans might make matters worse. But no one could deny that the Confederation was out of conventional options. While final details were being arranged for the operation, the narrative shifted to the Krazon side of the war. Far away in the Krazon stronghold, on the monumental warship Conqueror's Fist, Supreme Commander Garthox stood on a raised platform that allowed him an overview of his entire command deck. The Krazon had a strict hierarchy and a penchant for intimidation. Garthox, towering over all his subordinates, had scales that shimmered a dark crimson under the lights. His voice rumbled through the cavernous chamber like distant thunder. "Report," he snarled to his second-in-command, Captain Jur. "Which Confederation planets remain unclaimed?" Jur tapped at a console, projecting the star map. "They still hold Erevan, Marxus Prime, and the Caro Belt. After the last wave, we have them cornered. Most of their forces are consolidated in that region." Garthox bared a set of sharp teeth. "Then they have nowhere to run. Prepare the next offensive. Our victory is inevitable." "Of course, Supreme Commander," Jur said, bowing. "We have discovered transmissions referencing a new ally of the Confederation, some species from a backwater planet called Earth." Garthox gave a dismissive snort. "Humans. We've heard the name. Our intelligence suggests they are impulsive and reckless. Hardly a threat. Focus on fortifying the perimeter while we build more dreadnoughts. Then we launch a total assault." Jur nodded in agreement. The Krazon had never encountered a foe they couldn't crush through sheer brute force. They saw no reason these humans would be different. If anything, their chaotic nature sounded like a liability. The Krazon believed in rigid discipline. Let the enemy rely on improvised nonsense. In the end, discipline would prevail. But as Garthox addressed his officers, a subharmonic beep interrupted the general hush of the deck. "Commander, we are receiving a priority communication from an unknown source," announced an ensign at the comm station. Garthox glowered. "Play it." Suddenly, the large overhead screens flickered, and a cheerful human face popped into view. "Hello, Krazon War Department. This is Alex from Tech Support X. We noticed some unusual activity on your systems. Could you verify your current access codes so we can ensure everything is up to date? We'd hate for your entire network to become compromised." Silence fell across the deck. Garthox stared in disbelief, suspecting a trap. He growled, "Shut that off. Who authorized this connection? Locate the source immediately." Chaos spread among the communications staff, but the broadcast had already snaked its way into subroutines. A mild sense of confusion rippled through the Krazon. On another console, a higher-ranking officer was heard exclaiming, "Yes, I'm entering the security credentials now." "Wait, I thought you said—" That officer abruptly froze as if realizing a dire mistake. "Commander, I may have given them the encryption keys," he stammered. Garthox's roar shook the entire chamber. "Idiot! Cut the lines, isolate the server, do something." But it was too late. The infiltration had begun. Meanwhile, aboard the Unity's beacon, Kowalski grinned at the frantic readings scrolling across her data display. "Bingo," she muttered. "They took the bait." Ambassador Grant chuckled. "It never fails. Everyone's star fleets are so advanced, but the single biggest security hole is always gullible officers. Now we can inject the main payload." Terry, who stood behind them, felt an odd mixture of shock and fascination. Are you truly telling me the Krazon just handed you their security keys? Pretty much, Kowalski said, tapping the console. We had a contingency plan in case they refused, but it's simpler when they cooperate. Now we can push our virus across their entire network. Draven approached, arms folded. Fine. What does this virus do? We call it Confetti Storm, Kowalski replied. It overrides tactical and navigational subsystems, then broadcasts random data loops to confuse their targeting. Also, it uploads a minor comedic routine in the user interface. Purely for morale on our end, of course. Draven frowned. Comedic routine? This is war, General. She laughed. Exactly. We find that combining sabotage with a bit of comedic flair helps keep the enemy off balance. Now watch. On the large holographic display, the red dots that represented Krazon ships began shifting. Instead of organized formations, they started drifting in spirals or turning at strange angles. Some icons flickered in and out, representing ships that had lost contact or forcibly rebooting. This is only the first step, Kowalski explained. We've disabled their communications and real-time command structure. Up next is the more entertaining portion. Grant signaled a group of Earth ships outside the beacon. They were smaller frigates armed with specialized warheads, not huge cannons or missiles. In a well-coordinated move, the Earth vessels moved into position around the Krazon perimeter. Confetti Storm had effectively opened the door, letting them slip through as the Krazon defense grid struggled to identify friend from foe. Deploy glitter bombs, Kowalski said calmly into her comm. Within moments, the Earth frigates launched dozens of small projectiles that streaked toward key Krazon targets. Instead of explosive destruction, each warhead burst into a cloud of shimmering, microscopic particles. Over the live feed, Terry and Draven watched wide-eyed as Krazon hulls became drenched in a swirling rainbow of sparkling debris. The particulate matter quickly seeped into any ventilation or structural gap. Draven's jaw tightened. You're attacking them with glitter? Kowalski gave him a confident nod. We found that glitter is nearly impossible to remove, extremely disorienting under certain lighting, and it's an excellent vector for our next stage, pheromone injection. But not lethal. Carrie blinked. Pheromone injection? Are you telling me this is a chemical weapon? Grant waved a hand dismissively. We prefer to call it a mood enhancer. Earth discovered that a compound related to catnip can be modified for certain reptilian physiologies. We tested it on a small scale. The Krazon apparently respond to it with acute euphoria, mild confusion, and an overwhelming desire to be friendly. Perfectly harmless, just not something you want in a battle, if you're them. Indeed, the next sensor readings from Krazon ships showed a wild drop in coordinated activity. More camera feeds revealed Krazon warriors stumbling around corridors, half-dazed, some of them giggling in a guttural fashion. A few had started dancing to the ambient music that had somehow replaced normal alarm sirens in their internal comms. Even Terry, who was used to the Confederation's advanced technologies, stood in astonishment at the unfolding scene. This is beyond anything I've witnessed, Terry breathed. It's so unorthodox. Thank you, Kowalski said proudly. If the Krazon are disoriented and half of them are dancing in the halls, they can't exactly mount a coherent defense. Phase 3 is about to kick off. Before Draven could inquire, a massive wave of audio transmissions erupted across Krazon channels. Bold, percussive beats echoed into the vacuum of space, human music. It was loud, rhythmic, pulsating, and undeniably catchy. The hacked Krazon systems blasted it throughout their fleets. Officers, soldiers, and engineers alike found themselves subjected to a relentless sonic assault that burrowed into their minds. Combined with the euphoria from the catnip-derived pheromones, it was simply too much to handle. Reports trickled in of Krazon crew members literally dropping their weapons, linking arms, and moving in time with the base as best as their reptilian bodies allowed. Garthox, meanwhile, raged on the Conqueror's fist, bellowing at each attempt to restore control. Everywhere he turned, Screens displayed an animated caricature of a winking human face sporting a silly hat. "Someone kill that program," he roared. But each time a team tried to override, they found themselves locked out by the same subversive infiltration. Then they, too, began to feel lightheaded. Some collapsed in fits of giggles, smearing glitter on the metallic floors as they rolled around in delirium. Back aboard the Unity's beacon, Draven stood in slack-jawed wonder. "I can't believe what I'm seeing," he murmured. "They're falling apart without a single shot fired." Kowalski shrugged casually. "Shooting is so last century. Sometimes it's easier to undermine your enemy's morale and chain of command from within." At that moment, Ambassador Grant opened a wideband channel on a secure Confederation frequency. "Attention, Krazon Empire. This is Ambassador Jonah Grant of Earth. You might have noticed some disruptions in your fleet. We apologize for the inconvenience. If you'd like it to end, we have a simple proposition. Surrender, stop pillaging the galaxy, and join us for tacos and something called Netflix." Carrie blinked in surprise, her expression torn between exasperation and hope. "He's offering them tacos?" Kowalski snickered. "Never underestimate the power of good food and entertainment to change minds, especially once you've shown them that further resistance is futile." A chorus of confused, half-laughing Krazon voices filled the comm. One finally barked out in shaky defiance, but then the transmission cut to a roaring laughter from someone else on the bridge. Garthox's voice surfaced, a tortured growl that tried to maintain authority. "We will never, never yield to your musical assault. We are the Krazon. We are unstoppable." He paused mid-speech, choking on what sounded suspiciously like giggles as the pheromones took hold. "Stop that infernal noise. Stop, stop. Oh, stars help me." A hush fell in the Unity's Beacon's command center. Draven and Terry exchanged glances. That was Garthox, the legendary conqueror, undefeated in centuries of warfare, reduced to a stuttering mess by glitter, catnip, and loud music. The hum of tension in the room dissipated as everyone recognized how close the Krazon were to total collapse. "This is insane," Draven said. "And yet, it's working." He turned to Kowalski, who was calmly scanning telemetry. "We're about 2 hours into the operation," she reported. "Their entire frontline fleet is either incapacitated or drifting in aimless formation. We're about to move to the final step, direct contact." Grant nodded. "Yes, let's see if we can salvage some dignity for them by offering them a way out." Kowalski pressed a button, and a new wave of signals traveled across Krazon channels, forcibly interrupting the music. Instead, her voice resonated. "Greetings, Krazon Empire. This is General Elise Kowalski, Earth Defense Force. We have effectively disabled your command infrastructure. You can continue to flail in glitter and euphoria, or you can stand down and negotiate. Please respond if you're interested in a formal end to hostilities." A few sputters. Then Garthox appeared on screen, his imposing presence somewhat dampened by the fact that his scales sparkled with residual glitter. His eyes dilated from the lingering effects of the catnip compound. "You vile creatures," he growled. "You dare humiliate the Krazon like this." Grant offered a disarming smile. "It's not personal. We just prefer to avoid mass casualties. Listen, you can keep fighting a war you've already lost, or accept an alternative path. A peaceful settlement with the Confederation, guaranteed rights for the worlds you've conquered, and in exchange, we supply your empire with a variety of wonderful cultural luxuries. We really do have tacos, by the way, and guacamole. You might like it." Garthox's lips curled in a sneer, but his posture drooped in defeat. He glanced around his command center, saw his officers swaying in a delirious daze, and realized how thoroughly the Krazon had been outmaneuvered. We are done," he finally said, voice trembling with bitterness. "What do you require of us?" Grant's expression brightened. "First, a complete withdrawal from Confederation space. Second, reparations in the form of industrial support to help rebuild what you've destroyed. Third, an official treaty renouncing further aggression. And if you comply, we'll help your empire transition from militaristic conquest into something more productive, like trade, tourism, that sort of thing." Garthox blinked, disbelief evident. Tourism? You think the Krazan could be interested in hosting foreigners to see our capital? Kowalski nodded. Sure. People love visiting places with interesting architecture, unique customs, and you definitely have that. War is expensive. Tourism is profitable. Think it over. Also, if you sign, we'll neutralize the pheromones and disable the virus, so your ship can go back to normal operations. Minus the war, of course. Garthox exhaled, shoulders sagging. He understood that the Krazan had lost. We accept, he growled, as if forcing the words through clenched teeth. End this humiliation. Grant flicked a switch. Deal. We'll broadcast the ceasefire instructions to all Krazan fleets. Confetti storm will wind down. The glitter, well, that's going to stick around a while. Consider it a souvenir. The ambassador paused, raising an eyebrow. By the way, once you're feeling better, do try the Netflix subscription. We included a whole library of comedic shows that you might enjoy. That statement hovered in the air as the transmission ended. Admiral Draven shook his head, as though clearing away a dream. This is staggering. You actually convinced Garthox to stand down in under 3 hours. Grant shrugged. That's humans for you. Sometimes we find the weirdest ways to do things, but we get the job done. A hush enveloped the command center. Then it exploded into cheers. Officers who had braced for annihilation felt tears well up in relief, hugging one another, punching the air, or simply standing in shocked delight. Draven allowed himself a small smile, regarding the humans with newfound admiration. They had done the impossible, all while injecting a bizarre sense of humor into the gravest of situations. Carrie stepped forward, bowing slightly. On behalf of the Confederation, we are in your debt. I didn't believe it was possible. Kowalski gave a polite nod. We're just happy to help. Peace is usually less of a hassle than war, and it's more fun to celebrate when no one's dying. Draven took a deep breath. We'll need to formalize a peace treaty. We also have billions displaced by Krazan occupation. The reconstruction will be massive. Will your people assist? Of course, Grant said. We can provide logistics support, shipments of relief supplies, maybe some Earth specialists to help rebuild. In return, we just ask that you keep an open mind about future cooperation. We have a lot of cultural exports we think your people might enjoy. Carrie's eyes sparkled with new hope. I suspect the Council will embrace that wholeheartedly. Within hours, official transmissions spread across the galaxy, announcing that the Krazan Empire had ceased hostilities. Confetti storm was deactivated, the music subsided, and the wave of pheromones dissipated, allowing Krazan warriors to recover their senses. Though many felt mortified and uncertain about the future, none could deny that they had been bested in a way no one had expected. With no more illusions that they could maintain their empire by force, they grudgingly began to comply with the demands put forth by Earth and the Confederation. 3 hours and 15 minutes after the humans initiated their plan, Admiral Draven found himself signing preliminary peace documents alongside Terry and Ambassador Grant. The official ceremony was anything but conventional, as confetti cannons erupted, courtesy of the humans, and the entire staff erupted in applause. Draven marveled at how quickly the unthinkable had come to pass. 6 months rolled by in a haze of reconstruction. Freed planets resumed their normal commerce. The Krazan, spurred by the humiliating memory of forced dancing in glitter-filled corridors, showed surprising eagerness to adopt less violent pursuits. Their famed war factories pivoted toward building starliners and cargo vessels instead of destroyers. Their dreaded dreadnought yards became assembly lines for massive floating resorts. It turned out the Krazan capital was quite a scenic place, with towering basalt spires and crystalline lakes, perfect for adventurous tourists. And Earth wasted no time sending visitors eager to try the new hot destination. Admiral Draven walked through newly renovated corridors of the Unity's beacon. He paused at a large window overlooking the docking bay. A Krazan ship floated calmly next to an Earth passenger craft. Loading ramps were extended, with travelers shuffling to and fro, exchanging handshakes, or at least polite nods, since handshakes were still somewhat awkward for the reptilian Krazan. Draven remembered the utter hopelessness he had felt half a year ago. Now, trade blossomed, treaties were signed, and the galaxy seemed brighter. Glitter still occasionally showed up in odd corners, a lingering reminder of how swiftly everything had changed. He made his way to a conference room where Terry and other Confederation dignitaries gathered with the human delegation. Jonah Grant was there, sporting a casual blazer instead of formal attire. General Kowalski wore a sleek uniform and greeted Draven with a friendly smile. "Admiral, good to see you. Things seem to be running smoothly." Draven nodded. Hard to believe the Krazan are, well, not allies yet, but at least partners in this new system. "We never thought such transformation possible." Grant leaned against the table. "Humans have a saying, sometimes the best way to end a fight is to throw a party everyone wants to attend. That's basically what we did, just on a bigger scale." Kowalski laughed. "We call it soft power, Admiral. Show them a good time. Show them what they're missing, and they realize endless war is kind of a drag." Terry stepped forward, projecting some data. "The galaxy has changed in extraordinary ways. Trade routes that used to be sealed by Krazan blockades are now open. Displaced populations are returning to their homes. And your plan for tourism? The numbers are beyond anything we've ever seen." Kowalski looked pleased. "Earth has an entire entertainment industry that's been looking for a new market. We're shipping VR systems, streaming services, music festivals. People once said it was silly. Now it's bridging cultures." A beep signaled the arrival of a new group. The door slid open, revealing an unexpected figure. None other than Garthox himself, though many ranks lower in stature since the Empire's reorganization. He wore an ornate sash that might have been a holdover from his days as Supreme Commander, but around his neck hung a small translator device with an Earth brand logo. His once imposing glare had softened, though Draven still sensed that underlying Krazan pride. "Welcome," Draven said carefully. "We didn't expect you to personally attend, Garthox." The former conqueror grunted. "Spare me the courtesy. I've come to finalize some details on the transition. The new High Council of Krazan insisted I play a ceremonial role. They claim my presence lends legitimacy. I suppose that's all I'm good for these days." Grant spoke in a gentle tone. "I believe you'll find many other callings in a peaceful galaxy. Maybe you'll set up your own line of tourist attractions or host your own talk show about Krazan culture. People would love a guided tour from the legendary Garthox." A flicker of interest crossed Garthox's face. "Talk show." Draven suppressed a smile. It was surreal to watch the once feared warlord grow curious about a career in media. But that was the new reality. Glitter, catnip, and a comedic infiltration had shifted the entire power dynamic of the galaxy. No planetary destruction required. Terry asked everyone to be seated around a large, oval table. They spent the next hours finalizing terms. The Krazan would devote 20% of their industrial base to reconstruction in devastated systems. In return, the Confederation offered them favorable trade status. Earth, as the catalyst of these changes, would facilitate cultural exchanges that range from educational visits to massive music festivals. Garthox occasionally grumbled about how humiliating it was to sign documents that championed peace and prosperity, but each time he remembered the chaos of losing total control to catnip-laced glitter bombs and seemed to realize no alternative was left. Finally, after the last signature was in place, Terry announced the dawn of a new era for the galaxy. Applause erupted. This time, no confetti cannons went off, but Draven felt a deeper sense of satisfaction than any war victory had ever given him. He looked around the table at the humans. "It's over then. Properly over." Grant exhaled and broke into a grin. "Looks like it. Hey, we should celebrate. Shall we?" In typical human style, a celebration did ensue, though more muted and formal than the unstoppable raves Earth was known for. A small band played gentle music. Everyone relaxed. Garthox took a sip of a sweet, fruity beverage from Earth and seemed uncertain how to respond. With slight hesitation, he muttered, "It's not bad." Draven approached Kowalski. "General, on behalf of the Confederation, I want to thank you. You said you'd end this war in 3 hours. You kept your word. I still can't wrap my mind around it. Kowalski nodded. You're welcome, Admiral. If you ever face trouble again, Earth is just a message away, ready with a new bag of tricks. But hopefully we can avoid future wars altogether. Draven chuckled wryly. That would be something. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have called it naive. At that moment, the overhead lights dimmed, and to Draven's surprise, the band shifted from gentle music into a more upbeat tune. A few random folks from the Confederation side joined humans in dancing, reminiscent of the strange and unstoppable optimism humans seemed to carry wherever they went. Even Garthox tapped a claw in time with the beat before catching himself and quickly folding his arms, as though embarrassed. Terry sidled up to Draven and nodded toward the dance floor. Look at that. Hardly anyone could have predicted we'd be dancing with Krazon delegates in a matter of months. Yet here we are, Draven murmured, genuinely moved by the sight. They let the music swirl around them for a while. Nearby, Grant found Garthox sipping from a large punch bowl, attempting to keep glitter from drifting off his uniform. Garthox studied the confetti that still clung to him from prior humiliations. My people, they're adapting. Some hate me for losing. Others are grateful we ended the bloodshed. It's complicated. Grant nodded. Change always is. But you'll see, there's a better life to be had. If nothing else, at least it's less stressful. Garthox was silent for a few seconds. Then, a ghost of a smile tugged at his scaled lips. Yes, less stressful. He paused, as if searching for words. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you. You opened our eyes, in a rather bizarre fashion, to the foolishness of endless war. Grant patted him gently on the arm. That's what we do. We humans might be chaotic, but sometimes chaos is the best remedy for tyranny. 2 hours later, when the party wound down, Draven returned to the observation deck that overlooked the docking bay. The Krazon vessels were already shifting course, presumably heading back to their territory to implement the new treaty. Earth ships remained in orbit, prepared to assist with the next wave of humanitarian efforts. For a brief moment, the Admiral reflected on how close they had come to annihilation. All the brilliant scientists, all the advanced weapons, all the desperate heroism. And in the end, it was the humans' brand of unpredictability that saved them. Terry joined him, gazing out the viewport at the starfield beyond. Amazing, isn't it, sir? Our darkest hour ended in the blink of an eye. Draven nodded. Yes. To think, we never would have guessed the solution was a coordinated infiltration, some harmless but potent chemical agent, and an unstoppable dance. Track. Terry gave a soft laugh. Maybe the universe is bigger and stranger than we imagine. Draven let silence hang in the air, filled only by the gentle hum of the starship's machinery. That it is. The humans have taught me something about the nature of conflict, and perhaps about hope. We might find ways to talk about war in terms of cunning maneuvers and advanced technology, but in the end, maybe it's all about knowing how to break through your enemies without destroying them. It's a lesson worth remembering, Terry said. They turned from the viewport, making their way down a corridor where earlier celebrations had left traces of streamers and confetti. Draven suspected that no matter how many times the cleaning bots swept through, they would find glitter for months to come, almost like a colorful reminder that the galaxy had changed for the better. Back in the briefing room, Kowalski and Grant were packing up supplies, chatting with some Confederation representatives about the next steps in the reconstruction effort. Draven stepped over to them. Before you leave, might I request your continued presence for a time? There's so much rebuilding to coordinate. Kowalski waved a hand. Sure, we'll have specialists from Earth rotating in to help, but I can stay a while. Grant put down a small crate labeled Emergency Glow Sticks, which made Draven grin slightly. We'll help set up supply lines, rehouse refugees, retool Krazon factories. That sort of thing. The job's hardly done. Draven clasped his hands behind his back. I appreciate it, and you can be sure the Confederation will look upon Earth as a true ally. That evening, the official dispatch from the High Council was broadcast across the galaxy, announcing the war's end. It told the story of how Earth, in a bold and unprecedented display, ended a years-long conflict in the span of mere hours. Rumors abounded about the tactics used. Some believed it must have been an ultra-secret doomsday weapon, only to learn the reality was far less destructive and far more eccentric. Others claimed the humans must possess advanced telepathy to cause the Krazon to abandon all reason. But Terry's carefully worded press release downplayed the comedic details, focusing on the minimal casualties and the peaceful resolution. Still, stories of glitter bombers and catnip clouds circulated widely, capturing imaginations throughout the star systems. In the weeks that followed, Krazon soldiers once known for their ferocity found themselves working side by side with Confederation engineers, building new habitats for those who had been displaced. Earth established friendly outposts among Krazon worlds, introducing local populations to Earth cuisine, sports, and a puzzling phenomenon called karaoke. While some Krazon were wary or resentful, many discovered they enjoyed these forms of recreation far more than endless drills and battle preparation. One day, Draven visited Erevan Prime, a once devastated planet that had been liberated. As he walked through the city that was being rebuilt from rubble, he encountered a group of Krazon laborers cheerfully hoisting girders into place, aided by human technicians and a handful of Erevan natives. A radio played an upbeat tune, apparently something called 1970s funk from Earth, and to his astonishment, even the Krazon seemed to be tapping their toes in time with the music. Draven marveled at how swiftly cultures could adapt under the right circumstances. He saw Garthox in the distance, standing on an elevated platform, directing traffic. Despite his earlier role as the ultimate villain of this war, Garthox now managed logistic details for the very species he once attacked. Approaching him, Draven felt a complicated swirl of emotions. Anger, pity, admiration for this transformation. Garthox noticed him and offered a curt nod. "We're on schedule to finish this settlement's new power grid by next week," Garthox informed him. "Your engineers are quite skilled. My people are learning quickly." Draven found himself nodding back. It's remarkable how cooperative everyone is. A faint glimmer of pride lit Garthox's eyes. "I owe it all to your humans and their maddening tactics. It forced me to see that there's more to life than conquering." They stood in silence for a moment, the music from a nearby radio drifting through the air. People laughed, shouted instructions, hammered beams, and shared a camaraderie Draven had rarely witnessed during the bleakest days of the war. He recalled how each new conquest used to send shockwaves of terror across the Confederation, how he himself had succumbed to despair, believing nothing could stop Garthox's empire. And now that empire was busy rebuilding, rethinking, reshaping itself, all because a handful of humans decided to fight with humor, empathy, and a dash of reckless creativity. Eventually, Draven extended his hand. Garthox hesitated, then clasped it, bridging a chasm that had once been marred by violence. Draven offered a small, earnest smile. "May we never have to face such darkness again." "Agreed," Garthox said. "Though if we do, I suppose Earth will arrive with some new brand of madness." Draven chuckled softly. "Yes, I suppose so. Let's hope we don't need it." Over the ensuing months, the official Federation records would mark the day humans joined the war as a monumental turning point. Many called it the strangest victory in galactic history, a triumph of cunning over brute force, of laughter over fear. Historians would debate the ethical implications of using catnip-derived compounds in warfare, but lives were spared. Some moralists argued it was a humiliating tactic for the Krazon. Others praised it as a humane solution that avoided the mass bloodshed typical of wars spanning entire systems. But what no one argued against was that the end result was peace. Unexpected, slightly ridiculous, but undeniably effective. Confederation analysts tallied the total casualties since the humans' arrival and found them to be near zero, as the Krazon had simply stopped fighting, deliriously enthralled by ear-splitting human music and swirling clouds of glitter. Decades down the line, children in Krazon schools would laugh at cartoons depicting Garthox thrashing around in confusion as pixelated confetti rained from the ceiling. Human children would watch reenactments of Operation Firecracker in their history classes, giggling at the notion that a dreaded space empire was toppled by comedic infiltration. And across all these worlds, people found new common ground in the shared stories of how a galaxy on the brink of destruction was saved in just 3 hours of inspired, borderline absurd, but ultimately brilliant tactics. And so, as Admiral Ivan Draven stood by the observation window one final time before heading off to oversee post-war expansions, he couldn't help but smile. The stars stretched out in silent brilliance, no longer a backdrop for a hopeless struggle, but for an era of possibilities. A gentle swirl of leftover glitter drifted in a corridor as an air vent kicked in, catching Draven's eye. It sparkled under the lights, and he thought about how something so small could mark such an enormous shift in fate. He looked over at Terry, who approached with a fresh datapad, ready to depart for the next summit. "Admiral?" "Yes," Draven replied, turning from the window. "Let's see where this new galaxy leads us." He walked alongside Terry, footsteps echoing in the corridor, carrying with him a renewed sense of optimism. After all, if humans could turn the mightiest empire's war fleet into a big, glittering dance party, then perhaps anything was possible.